Motion in your step.
Motivation in your heart.
Hello, and welcome to today's Motion and Motivation podcast.
We've put together a study guide for everyone. If you need it, you can grab it from the video description.
All right, ready to dive deep. Today, it's all about this cultural icon, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yeah, a classic.
You sent over some excerpts, so I'm thinking you're ready to unlock these secrets,
Yeah.
right? Just like millions before us.
Well, and it's fascinating, isn't it, how relevant it still is.
Totally.
I mean, even decades later, Dorothy Carnegie, in her introduction, talks about how people are still hungry for this stuff, almost 50 years after it first came out.
That's incredible. Talk about staying power. So before we get into all the secrets, I'm curious, how did this book even happen?
It's funny, Carnegie, he didn't start out trying to be like the relationship guru.
Right.
He was all about public speaking. But he realized pretty quickly that even if you're a fantastic speaker, if you don't get human relations, you're not going to get very far.
It's true.
He even said, he wished he'd known this stuff earlier in his own life.
It's like having all the best ingredients but no recipe. So how did he go from public speaking to, master of connection?
Well, he saw a need, like a real gap. Back in the 1930s, there was this survey, and it showed that adults, they were desperate for some practical advice on, people skills.
Yeah.
Tons of books on public speaking, but nothing on this vital part of life.
Right.
That's what pushed him, to create that famous course of his, and that's what became this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
So it's not just about being, charismatic or a smooth talker. It's really about connecting.
Exactly. And what's so cool is he didn't just stick to one thing. Public speaking, salesmanship, human relations, even psychology. He kind of blended it all together.
Yeah.
His teachings, they were all about using it in the real world. His students, they even formed clubs to keep practicing and getting better. Imagine, some people were traveling from Chicago to New York every single week just to go to his class.
Oh, wow. That's dedication.
That's serious commitment.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's dive into some of these techniques for, winning friends. What's the first one?
Well, the very first thing he talks about is becoming genuinely interested in other people. It's not just about, being polite. It's really about being engaged with what they have to say.
Right.
Think about it. When was the last time you really listened to someone, with your full attention, not thinking about what you're going to say next or, your to-do list?
Oh, good point. I'm definitely guilty of that sometimes, planning my response.
We all do it.
So being a good listener, that's like a superpower.
It's powerful for sure. Carnegie tells this story. He's at a dinner party, and he meets this botanist.
Okay.
He doesn't know anything about plants, but he just listens, really listens, and this botanist is just so flattered by that simple act of attention.
Wow. So being present, being attentive, it's a huge compliment in itself.
Absolutely. And speaking of making people feel valued, Carnegie also talks about the power of remembering names.
Mm-hmm.
He contrasts, the average person who forgets names instantly with this political powerhouse named Jim Farley. This guy could remember names and details about thousands of people.
Wait, how is that even possible?
Well, Farley had a system. He gathered info about their families, businesses, even their political opinions. And he'd connect those details with their names, like building little profiles in his mind, instant connections.
That's brilliant. I mean, everyone loves to feel seen and remembered.
Right, exactly. And it can have such a profound impact. One of Carnegie's students, Sid Levy, tells a story about this client, Nicodemus Papadoulos.
Okay.
Most people called him Nick, but Levy made a point of using his full name. The client was so touched because it was the first time in 15 years that anyone had actually called him by his correct name.
That's powerful. It shows how these small things can have a big impact, making people feel valued.
Totally. And that brings us to another one of Carnegie's key principles, being a good listener.
Okay, that sounds simple enough, but I bet there's more to it.
Oh, absolutely. It goes way beyond just letting the other person talk. It's about actively listening, especially when they're upset or maybe critical of something.
Okay.
Carnegie tells this fascinating story about this notorious customer that the New York telephone company had to deal with. This guy was constantly calling, ranting, raving, even threatening lawsuits.
Oh, that sounds like a nightmare. How did they handle that?
Well, instead of arguing or getting defensive, they just had someone patiently listen to his whole tirade. No interruptions.
Wow.
The result, he calmed down, apologized, and placed a bigger order than ever before.
So sometimes the best response is just to let someone be heard.
Exactly. Carnegie even quotes this Chinese proverb, "He who treads softly goes far." By listening patiently without judgment, we can, like, diffuse anger and actually connect.
That's a good reminder. So we've got being genuinely interested, remembering names, and being a good listener. What else can help us win people over?
Well, now we're getting into influencing people's thinking, and Carnegie has some strong advice here. Avoid arguments, like, at all costs.
Yeah. Okay, easier said than done.
Right. But he actually shares this funny story about himself to make the point. He's at a party, and he misquotes Shakespeare. Someone corrects him, and instead of just letting it go,
Oh, no.
he argues back, tries to prove he's right. It turns into this big thing, and his friend pulls him aside and says, "Why prove to a man he is wrong? Is that going to make him like you?"
Ooh. Yeah, I've been there. Sometimes winning the argument just isn't worth it.
Exactly. What Carnegie realized is that letting the other person save face is often more valuable than being right.
It's true.
Winning an argument might feel good, but it doesn't win you friends.
Right. So it's about choosing your battles wisely. What about when we're the ones who messed up? What's the best approach then?
Carnegie is really clear on this one. Admit your wrongs and do it quickly and emphatically. He tells this powerful story about a father who was estranged from his son.
Okay.
He had struggled with opium addiction, but he'd recovered. He wanted to reconcile, but he felt stuck because of, like, cultural traditions that said the son should make the first move.
So it was a conflict between what he wanted and, like, social pressure.
Exactly. But he learned Carnegie's principle about admitting wrongs, and he decided to swallow his pride.
Wow.
He went to his son, admitted his mistakes, and genuinely apologized. He rebuilt his relationship with his son, daughter-in-law, grandchildren, the whole family.
That's beautiful. It shows the importance of connection over ego, you know? So admitting wrongs, avoiding arguments.
Hmm.
What's the next key to influencing others?
This might sound simple, but Carnegie stresses seeing things from the other person's point of view.
That seems pretty basic for any healthy relationship, right?
You'd think so, but it's so easy to get stuck in our own heads. Carnegie actually shares this story about park fires near his home.
Okay.
He was passionate about protecting these trees, and he would scold any kids he caught starting fires. He'd threaten them with jail time, thinking he was teaching them a lesson.
So he meant well, but maybe not the best approach.
Right. He was focused on his own frustration, not the kids' perspective. It wasn't until he started asking them questions, engaging with empathy, that he started making progress.
I'm seeing a pattern here. Understanding the other person's perspective seems to be key.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another important principle: dramatizing your ideas. Carnegie believed that just presenting facts wasn't always enough to persuade someone.
Okay, I like that.
You have to make your ideas come alive. He uses this example of Charles Schwab, who was famous for his motivational skills. Schwab visited this mill that was underperforming. Instead of lecturing the workers, he asked how many heats they'd made that day. They said 6. He grabbed some chalk and wrote a giant 6 on the floor.
Okay, what happened?
The next morning, Schwab walks through the mill. The night shift had seen the 6, and they're like, "What's that?" The day shift explained. And suddenly, the night shift was determined to beat them. They made 7 heats and proudly wrote a big 7 on the floor.
That's brilliant. A simple visual cue sparked this competition and boosted productivity. So it's about finding creative ways to, like, grab attention and inspire action.
Exactly. And speaking of creative approaches, Carnegie also tells the story of this sales rep who was struggling to convince a client to switch brands of cold cream.
Okay.
Weeks of failed pitches. Finally, he decides to go big. He walks into the client's office and dumps 32 jars of competing cold creams on his desk.
Whoa. Did it work?
It did. The visual impact of all those jars, it made the client pay attention in a way spreadsheets never could.
So it's not just the information, it's how you present it.
Precisely. And that leads us to another powerful principle: throwing down a challenge.
Ooh.
Carnegie believed that people are motivated by the desire to excel, to prove themselves.
Oh, I can relate to that. A little healthy competition is a good motivator.
Right. He uses the example of Theodore Roosevelt, who overcame childhood illness and transformed his life. His father challenged him to push beyond his limitations.
So a challenge can be a catalyst for growth.
Exactly. And this applies to everyone, not just historical figures. We all have that desire to achieve something, and a challenge can be the spark we need.
This is great. We've covered so much. Genuine interest, remembering names, avoiding arguments, dramatizing your ideas. Carnegie is full of wisdom. And what I love is that he uses real-life examples. It makes it so relatable.
That's the beauty of his style.
Yeah.
And speaking of memorable examples, he has a great one on how to offer criticism without causing resentment.
Oh, that's a skill we all need.
Seriously.
Criticism is a minefield. How do we navigate that without causing an explosion?
Well, Carnegie says it's crucial to start with praise before addressing any shortcomings.
Okay, so soften the blow.
Exactly. It's like showing respect before you get into the tough stuff.
Yeah.
He uses the example of Abraham Lincoln, who is known for his incredible communication skills. Even when dealing with a general who made serious mistakes, Lincoln would start his letters with praise, acknowledging past successes before addressing the issues.
So even with tough feedback, acknowledge their strengths and contributions first.
Exactly. It helps maintain respect and makes people more receptive.
This is gold. I'm taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
So where do we go from here?
Well, we've explored winning friends and influencing thinking, but now we're getting into the really powerful stuff, becoming a leader.
Ooh, okay. I can't wait to hear more about that. So listeners, stay tuned. We'll be right back with part 2 of our deep dive into Dale Carnegie's masterpiece.
Welcome back. We're deep in Dale Carnegie's world, right? How to win friends and influence people.
Yes, so many great strategies so far.
We've got connecting, winning folks to our way of thinking.
And now I'm ready for those leadership secrets. You said there was even more powerful stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Carnegie believed it all starts with something surprisingly simple. He called it begin with praise and honest appreciation.
Okay, but that sounds more like, good manners than some secret weapon.
You'd be amazed how often it's forgotten.
True.
Carnegie argued that people are starved for appreciation. We criticize fast, but slow to give genuine praise.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see that. We're all fix-it focused.
Right. Maybe we forget to acknowledge what's going right.
Yeah.
And it's not about empty flattery either. Carnegie was big on sincerity. Find something you truly admire in someone and tell them.
So notice the good and call it out.
Precisely. He tells this story. A woman transformed a hotel maid's life just by saying, "Marie, you have treasures inside you."
Wow, the power of words. A few words of encouragement
Can make all the difference.
can create ripples.
And it's not just for big accomplishments either. Carnegie said, praise even the smallest improvement.
So effort matters, not just the end result.
Exactly. Consistent encouragement helps people grow. He uses this example, a discouraged group of car salespeople. Their manager, instead of lecturing, he asks, "What do you expect from me?" He writes their ideas on a board. Then he's like, "Okay, now what can I expect from you?"
Love that. Flips the script.
Yeah.
Mutual respect.
Right, and those salespeople seeing their own expectations written out, it was like a light bulb. Sales boomed. They wanted to meet their own standards.
A shift in perspective, huge impact. So praise, encouragement, what else is in the leadership toolbox?
Calling attention to mistakes, but indirectly.
Okay, now that sounds tricky. How do you correct someone without making them defensive?
It's a balance, but Carnegie believed people learn best from their own discoveries. Instead of pointing out the error, ask questions that guide them to see it themselves.
Prompting reflection instead of lecturing.
Exactly. There's this story about a lawyer arguing a case, Supreme Court level. A justice points out a flaw in his argument. The lawyer, instead of admitting it, he doubles down.
Oh, I bet that didn't go well.
Not at all. Justices weren't impressed. Carnegie said, admitting mistakes gracefully, that earns respect.
Humility over ego, even when it's tough.
Right. And speaking of tough, talk about your mistakes before criticizing someone else.
Lead by example. We're all human, right?
Exactly. More relatable. Carnegie tells this story, a man's frustrated with his credit department for annoying a customer. Instead of blaming, he tells the customer, look, if they annoyed you, they've probably annoyed others. And that's bad for business. Believe me, I want to hear this more than you want to say it.
Brilliant. Turns it into a chance to connect and get feedback.
Right. And the customer, so impressed by the honesty, placed an even bigger order.
That's leading with vulnerability. Builds trust.
Absolutely. And this might seem counterintuitive, but ask questions instead of giving direct orders.
Wait, shouldn't leaders be decisive? Give instructions.
Traditionally, yes. But Carnegie felt asking questions engaged people better, more collaborative.
Inviting input, making people part of the solution.
Precisely. He talks about Owen D. Young, an amazing leader. Rarely gave orders, he'd offer suggestions, ask, you might consider this, do you think that would work?
Makes people think critically, take ownership.
And a more positive environment. Which brings us to another point. Let the other person save face.
Didn't we talk about that with arguments?
We did. But it's vital for leadership, too. Everyone needs respect, even when they mess up.
So protect their dignity, even when correcting them.
Exactly. Be tactful, discreet. Carnegie tells this story, a manager firing seasonal employees. Instead of just letting them go, he acknowledges their work, expresses confidence in their future.
Much better than just the axe.
So much more humane. Those employees left feeling valued, despite the job loss.
Kindness and empathy go a long way. So we've got saving face, asking instead of ordering. What else?
Remember praising the smallest improvement?
Yeah, encourage growth, right?
Acknowledge effort, celebrate any milestone. He tells this story about a boy struggling with math. His dad, instead of scolding, makes it fun. Flashcards, timing practice, celebrating every improvement with hugs and dancing.
That's so sweet. Learning becomes positive, not a chore.
And the boy, who hated math, ended up excelling.
Positive reinforcement. Amazing. What other leadership gems are there?
Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to.
Love that. High expectations, believing in their potential.
Exactly. He uses this example, a fourth-grade teacher with a challenging student, Tommy. Instead of focusing on the bad, she says, "Tommy, you're a natural leader. I'm counting on you to make this the best fourth-grade class ever."
She flipped it. Weakness becomes strength.
And Tommy, wanting to live up to that, becomes a model student.
It's like planting a seed of belief. He blossomed.
The power of positive expectations. And speaking of positive influence, Carnegie also talked about encouragement, specifically making the fault seem easy to correct.
Okay, that's got to be tricky. Acknowledge the problem without discouraging them.
Frame it to inspire hope and action. People are more likely to improve if they believe they can.
Focus on potential, not dwelling on the bad.
Precisely. He uses the example of a young woman learning piano. Her teacher noticed her long nails were a problem. But instead of criticizing, she says, "Babette, you have such lovely hands and nails. But if you want to play as well as you're capable of, it'd be much easier if you trimmed your nails shorter."
Clever. Acknowledge the nails, but suggest a change for the better.
And the student, seeing her teacher believed in her, she trimmed her nails.
Encouragement and suggestion. So much better than just criticism.
Absolutely. What's next on Carnegie's list?
Let's see.
Make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest.
Okay, that's a challenge. How do you get buy-in for something someone doesn't want to do?
Align their interests with yours. People are motivated when they see personal benefit.
Find the win-win.
Exactly. He even tells a story about getting a hotel discount. Instead of focusing on his own needs, he talks about the pros and cons for the hotel manager if they stuck to the higher rent.
He reframed it to appeal to the manager's self-interest.
And the manager, realizing it was in their best interest to be flexible, gave a big discount.
Be strategic. Find that common ground.
Yeah.
So what's the final leadership principle?
A classic. Throw down a challenge.
Love that one. It's all about that inner drive to be great.
Exactly. Carnegie felt challenges bring out the best in us.
Set the bar high, believe in people.
Precisely. He tells the story of Al Smith, New York's governor. He needed a warden for Sing Sing prison, known for scandals. He appoints Louis E. Laws, who's hesitant. Smith says, "Young fellow, I don't want to send you to Sing Sing. I want you to run it."
Powerful. Not punishment, but opportunity.
Yes.
Leadership.
And Laws, inspired, takes the job, becomes a famous reformer.
A well-placed challenge unlocks potential. Amazing.
It really can. And that wraps up our exploration of Carnegie's leadership principles.
Wow, this has been incredible. Praise, appreciation, asking questions, throwing down challenges. I feel like I have a whole new leadership toolkit.
That was Carnegie's goal, empowering us to communicate better, build relationships, inspire others.
So listeners, now that you got a taste of this wisdom, which principle are you most excited to try out? We'll be right back with part 3 after a quick word from our sponsors.
Back again for the deep dive. We're wrapping up with Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. This book is amazing. It is. So many insights into how we humans tick.
Right. We've uncovered so much. Being genuinely interested, remembering names, avoiding arguments, praising progress.
Oh, it's a gold mine.
But there's this one thing before we finish. We got to talk about Carnegie's perspective on criticism.
Ah, yes, criticism, how to do it right. That can make or break things.
It's a struggle, right? Nobody likes giving it, nobody likes getting it.
Tricky, tricky dance. But Carnegie has some good tips for navigating those waters.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, he says straight up, criticism is often pointless.
Really?
He argues it rarely changes anything and often just makes people resentful.
Yeah, when I'm criticized, I get defensive, not better.
It's human nature. He even talks about criminals like Al Capone, Two-Gun Crowley, notorious guys, but they never blame themselves for anything.
Wow, extreme examples.
Extreme, but it shows how we are. We protect our egos even when we're wrong.
So how do we get past that defensiveness?
Carnegie says, instead of criticizing, try to understand their point of view. He quotes John Wanamaker, the department store guy. He said, "I learned it's foolish to scold. I have enough trouble with my own limitations. Why fret that God didn't give everyone equal smarts?"
Good point. We all have different experiences, backgrounds.
Exactly. Judging based on our own limited view, that's not fair.
So, understanding first. But what about when feedback is really needed? How do we make it work?
That's where Carnegie's constructive criticism comes in. Be specific, focus on the behavior, not the person.
Okay.
Offer solutions, not just complaints.
So not just you're wrong, but here's how to do it better.
Exactly. And be timely. Address stuff as it comes up.
Don't bottle it up till you explode.
Exactly. And even when it's constructive, start with praise, end with encouragement.
Like a sandwich? Good stuff on either side of the tough part.
Perfect. Remind them of their strengths and that you believe they can improve.
This is great stuff. I feel like I'm finally getting how to give feedback the right way.
That's the brilliance of Carnegie. Complex ideas made simple and usable.
He really understood people.
He did. And his book still helps people today.
Well, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into how to win friends and influence people. We've explored so much: connecting, influencing, leading, even criticizing effectively.
We hope you've gained insights and tools to improve your relationships at work, in life.
Remember what Carnegie said, knowledge is only power when you use it. So go out there and put these principles to work. You might be amazed by the results.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss any of our updates. Also, if you think this video could help others, please share it with them. Thanks for watching and for your support.